The massive space station, called Nexus Prime, floated in empty space between three star systems. It was built for one purpose: to host meetings between different alien races when they needed to talk instead of fight. Today, it would host the most important meeting in galactic history. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching the station grow larger on the main screen. The human ship was small compared to the giant alien vessels already docked at the station. Morrison was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had fought in many battles, but today he hoped to prevent a war instead of starting one. "Admiral, we're getting signals from the alien fleets," said Lieutenant Sarah Brooks from her console. She was young and smart, one of the best intelligence officers in the human fleet. "The Zalari Empire has 12 ships. The Thek Collective brought 15. The Drakmor have 10, but theirs are bigger," Morrison nodded. He had studied these three alien races for months, preparing for this moment. The Zalari looked like giant crystals that could think and talk. They were smart, but cold, caring only about logic and profit. The Thek were different. They shared one mind across millions of bodies like a hive of insects. The Drakmor were warriors who looked like dragons walking on two legs. They respected strength above all else. "Any word from the diplomatic team?" Morrison asked. "Ambassador Lisa Carter is already on the station," Brooks replied. "She's setting up the meeting rooms. Commander Pete Williams is checking security with the station guards." Morrison trusted both of them. Carter was the best diplomat Earth had ever produced. She could make enemies into friends with just her words. Williams was a military genius who could spot trouble before it started. If anyone could make these peace talks work, it was them. The Liberty docked at Nexus Prime with a soft bump. Morrison straightened his uniform and walked to the airlock. As the doors opened, he stepped into a world unlike anything on Earth. The AI station's main corridor was huge, with ceilings so high they disappeared into shadows. Alien creatures of all shapes and sizes walked past, some floating, some crawling, some that Morrison couldn't even describe. The air smelled strange, like metal and ozone mixed with something sweet. Different species needed different air to breathe, so the station mixed everything together. Humans could breathe it, but it made Morrison's nose itch. Captain Amy Rodriguez met him at the airlock. She commanded the UES Defiant, which would provide security during the talks. Rodriguez was short but tough, with scars on her hands from years of fighting. "Admiral, the alien delegations are already here. They're not happy about waiting." "Let them wait," Morrison said. "We're here to help them, make peace, not to bow down to them." They walked through the station toward the conference center. Along the way, Morrison saw groups of different aliens staring at the humans. Some looked curious, like they were seeing something new and interesting. Others looked annoyed, as if humans were children who had wandered into an adult conversation. Near the conference center, Morrison met Dr. Kevin Stone. The doctor was thin and pale, with thick glasses that made his eyes look huge. He studied alien psychology, trying to understand how different species thought and felt. "Admiral, I've been watching the alien delegations," Stone said quietly. "They're all acting strange." "Strange how?" Morrison asked. "They're too calm," Stone explained. "These three races have been fighting for years. Their people are dying every day, but their leaders act like they're here for a casual business meeting. Something's not right." Morrison frowned. He had the same feeling, but he couldn't put his finger on what was wrong. "Keep watching them, Doctor. Let me know if you see anything else." The conference room was enormous, with a round table in the center. Each delegation sat at a different section of the table, with empty space between them. The humans sat in the smallest section, almost like they were guests at someone else's party. The Zalari delegation was led by Ambassador Kithara, a being that looked like a walking diamond. When she spoke, her voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. The Thek were represented by Node Prime 7734, a creature that looked like a cross between a mantis and a spider. It spoke for all Thek everywhere, since they all shared the same mind. The Drakmor sent War Chief Gorthak, who was 8 feet tall with scales like armor and teeth like swords. Ambassador Carter stood up to speak first. She was a middle-aged woman, with kind eyes and a warm smile. Thank you all for coming to these peace talks. For too long, your 3 civilizations have been at war. Billions have died. Entire worlds have been destroyed. We're here to find a better way. Kithara's crystal. Body flashed with cold light. Humans speak of peace, but they know nothing of our struggles. The Thek Collective seeks to absorb all thinking beings into their hive mind. The Drakmor destroy everything they cannot conquer. Peace is impossible while such threats exist. Node. Prime 7734's insect-like head tilted to one side. The Zalari Empire enslaves entire species to mine their precious crystals. The Drakmor kill for sport and call it honor. Individual thinking leads only to chaos and suffering. All beings must join the collective for true peace. War Chief Gorthak slammed a massive fist on the table, making it shake. Both the crystal minds and the bug brains are weak. They hide behind technology and groupthink. True strength comes from individual warrior spirit. Only the strong deserve to rule the stars. Morrison watched this exchange with growing worry. Each species saw the others as existential threats. They weren't just fighting over territory or resources. They were fighting over completely different ways of life. The Zalari wanted logical order and profit. The Thek wanted everyone to think the same way. The Drakmor wanted to prove their strength through battle. Perhaps we can find common ground, Carter suggested. All 3 of your civilizations are ancient and proud. You've achieved amazing things. Surely there's a way to coexist without destroying each other. High Counselor Vestan, the leader of the Zalari delegation, spoke for the first time. His voice was colder than space itself. Humans are young and naive. You've been in space for barely a century. You cannot understand conflicts that have lasted for millennia. Morrison felt his temper rising, but he kept his voice calm. Maybe being young gives us a fresh perspective. Sometimes it takes an outsider to see solutions that others have missed. Gorthak laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. Fresh perspective? You humans are barely past throwing rocks at each other. What could you possibly teach warrior races about conflict? The first day of talks ended with no progress. As the alien delegations returned to their ships, Morrison met with his team in a secure room on the Liberty. The mood was dark. They're not here to make peace, Williams said bluntly. They're here to size each other up for the next round of fighting. Carter looked tired and frustrated. I've negotiated with dozens of alien species, but I've never seen this level of fundamental incompatibility. They don't just disagree, they represent completely different ways of existing. Dr. Stone nodded grimly. It's worse than that. I've been monitoring their body language and vocal patterns. All 3 delegations are hiding something. They have a secret agenda that has nothing to do with peace talks. Morrison stared out the window at the alien ships surrounding Nexus Prime. Somewhere out there, fleets were moving in the darkness between stars. The peace talks were just beginning, but he already had the feeling they were doomed to fail. And, when they did fail, the consequences would shake the entire galaxy. The second day of peace talks began with each alien faction making their demands clear. Morrison sat in the observer section with his team, watching as centuries of hatred spilled across the conference table like poison. Ambassador Kithara spoke, first, her crystal body catching the light as she moved. The Zalari Empire requires exclusive mining rights to the Crimson Nebula, the Vortex Cloud, and the Stellar Graveyard. These regions contain quantum crystals essential to our civilization's survival. Any interference with our operations will be considered an act of war. The quantum crystals she mentioned were the most valuable substance in the galaxy. They powered faster than light travel and could store massive amounts of energy. Morrison knew that giving the Zalari exclusive access to 3 entire nebulae would make them incredibly powerful. Node Prime 7734 responded immediately. The Thek Collective rejects these demands. Individual ownership of resources leads to inequality and conflict. All 3 factions must submit to partial mental integration. Only by sharing thoughts and emotions can true understanding be achieved. We propose a trial period where leaders from each faction join the collective temporarily. Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. The Thek wanted to literally change how their enemies thought. It was like asking someone to let you rewrite their personality. War Chief Gorthak stood up, his massive frame towering over the table. Both proposals are the words of cowards. Honor demands that territorial disputes be settled through ritual, combat. I challenge the strongest warriors from each faction to single battle. The winners will claim the contested systems for their people. Ambassador Carter tried to find middle ground. Perhaps we could establish joint mining operations in the nebulae, with profits shared equally. And instead of mental integration or combat, we could create cultural exchange programs where each species learns about the others through peaceful interaction. High Counselor Vexthan's laugh sounded like breaking glass. Humans propose solutions based on equality and cooperation. How quaint. But the galaxy operates on power, not fairness. The strong take what they need. The weak serve or perish. Captain Amy Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She was providing security for the talks, but Morrison could see she wanted to respond to the insult. Her hand rested near her. Sidearm, a habit from years of combat. Dr. Kevin Stone was taking notes on a small device, recording everything the aliens said and did. Morrison knew the doctor was analyzing their behavior, looking for clues about their real intentions. So far, Stone's expression had grown more worried with each passing hour. The talks continued for days with no progress. Each faction repeated their demands over and over, never willing to compromise. The Zalari wanted their crystals. The Thek wanted to change everyone's minds. The Drakmor wanted to fight for everything. Commander Pete Williams spent his time analyzing the security reports from around the galaxy. What he found made him increasingly nervous. All 3 alien factions were moving military fleets while their diplomats talked peace. Ships were gathering near the borders of human space as if preparing for something. Admiral, Williams said, during a private meeting in Morrison's quarters, I'm seeing massive fleet movements from all 3 factions. They're not random deployments. It looks like they're positioning for coordinated action. Morrison studied the star charts Williams had prepared. Red dots showed Zalari ships, blue dots marked Thek vessels, and green dots indicated Drakmor fleets. The pattern was clear. They were surrounding human territory like a closing net. What's their target? Morrison asked, though he already suspected the answer. Us, Williams said simply. They're testing our defenses, probing our response times. It's like they're planning to invade human space regardless of how these peace talks end. Lieutenant Sarah Brooks confirmed Williams's analysis with intelligence reports from across the galaxy. Sir, we're picking up encrypted communications between the 3 factions. They're coordinating something, but we can't break their codes. What we do know is that they've been referring to something called the human question in their transmissions. Morrison felt anger building in his chest. The aliens had invited humanity to mediate their peace talks, but it was all a lie. They were using the negotiations as a distraction while they prepared to attack human worlds. His people were trying to help end a war, and the aliens were planning to start a new one. On the 5th day of talks, Ambassador Carter made one last attempt at finding common ground. She had prepared a detailed proposal for sharing resources, establishing trade agreements, and creating a galactic council where all species could have a voice in important decisions. We're offering you a chance to end this war and build something better, Carter said, her voice filled with passion. Imagine what your civilizations could achieve if you worked together instead of fighting. The Zalari's crystal technology, the Thek's collective knowledge, and the Drakmor's warrior spirit could solve problems that no single species could handle alone. For a moment, Morrison thought the aliens might actually consider the proposal. Then High Counselor Vexathon spoke, and his words shattered any hope of peace. "Humans offer cooperation because they are weak," Vexathon said coldly. "They have no ancient wisdom, no advanced technology, no warrior tradition. They survived in the galaxy by hiding in the shadows and serving their betters. Now they pretend to be mediators, but they are simply useful pets who have forgotten their place." The insult hung in the air like a toxic gas. Morrison felt every human in the room tense up. Ambassador Carter's face went pale with shock and anger. Captain Rodriguez's hand moved to her weapon. Even Dr. Stone looked up from his notes with fire in his eyes. But it was War Chief Gorthak who delivered the final blow. The massive Drakmor warrior looked directly at Morrison and spoke in a voice like thunder. "When these talks end, as they surely will, the three great powers will turn their attention to more pressing matters. The human infestation has spread too far across the galaxy. It is time to remind the lesser species of their proper place in the cosmic order." Node Prime 7734 added its own threat. The Thek Collective agrees. Individual human thinking has introduced chaos into ordered systems. This cannot be allowed to continue. Humans must submit to integration or face elimination. Ambassador Kithara's crystal body flashed with cold light. The Zalari Empire concurs. Human expansion threatens the natural balance of power. They have taken resources and territory that rightfully belong to their superiors. Correction is necessary. Morrison stood up slowly, his military training keeping his movements controlled and deliberate. Every eye in the room turned to him as he walked to the center of the conference table. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but carried the authority of someone who had commanded fleets in battle. Ambassador Carter, Commander Williams, Captain Rodriguez, Dr. Stone, Lieutenant Brooks, he said formally, "Pack your things. We're leaving." Carter looked confused. "Admiral, we can't give up. There has to be a way to make them see reason." Morrison turned to face the alien delegations. "There is no reasoning with beings who see other intelligent life as pets or infestations. We came here in good faith to help end a war. Instead, we discovered that you're planning to start a new one, against us." High Counselor Vexathon made a sound like grinding crystals. Humans finally show wisdom by recognizing their inferior position. Morrison smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I think you misunderstood me. We're not retreating in fear. We're going home to prepare." "Prepare for what?" War Chief Gorthak demanded. Morrison looked each alien leader in the eye before answering. "To show the galaxy what happens when someone threatens humanity. You've made a serious mistake. You think we're weak because we're young. You think we're helpless because we offered peace. You're about to learn the difference between choosing not to fight and being unable to fight." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Oh, and one more thing. You have 72 hours to remove all alien military vessels from human space. After that, anything foreign in our territory will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly." As the human delegation left Nexus Prime, the three alien factions sat in stunned silence. They had expected the humans to beg, to plead, to offer more concessions. Instead, they had issued an ultimatum. None of the aliens took the human threat seriously. After all, what could a young species do against civilizations that had ruled the stars for thousands of years? They were about to find out that humanity's greatest strength was being underestimated by their enemies. The peace talks had failed completely. Now the real test would begin. The UES Liberty raced through hyperspace toward Earth, carrying news that would change everything. Admiral Morrison sat in his command chair, watching stars blur past on the main screen. Behind them, the aliens were probably laughing about how Easily, they had scared off the humans. They wouldn't be laughing much longer. "Admiral, incoming message from Earth Command," Lieutenant Brooks announced from her station. "General Ryan Clark wants to speak with you immediately." Morrison nodded. Clark was the head of Earth's military forces, a tough old soldier who had fought in the early alien contact wars. If anyone would understand the situation, it would be him. Clark's weathered face appeared on the main screen. His gray eyes were sharp and alert despite his age. "Jake, I got your preliminary report. Tell me you're joking about the aliens planning to invade human space." "I wish I was, sir," Morrison replied. "All three factions are moving fleets toward our territory. They use the peace talks as a distraction while they positioned for attack. They see us as a problem that needs to be solved." Clark was quiet for a moment, processing the information. "What's your assessment of their military capabilities?" Commander Williams stepped forward to answer. "The Zalari have advanced energy, weapons, and crystal-based technology that's incredibly efficient. The Thek use swarm tactics with ships that can coordinate perfectly because of their hive mind. The Drakmor ships are heavily armored and built for close combat. Any one of them would be a serious threat. All three together would normally be unstoppable." Clark finished. "But we're not normal, are we? Jake, I'm authorizing Protocol 7. Do you understand what that means?" Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. Protocol 7 was humanity's most classified military plan. It had been developed in secret over decades, based on the assumption that someday humanity would face extinction from alien powers. Most humans didn't even know it existed. "Yes, sir, I understand," Morrison said quietly. "How long do we have?" "The alien fleets will reach our outer colonies in about a week," Clark replied. "That gives us time to implement the first phase. Jake, I'm putting you in overall command of the operation. You know these aliens better than anyone." The transmission ended, leaving Morrison alone with his thoughts. Protocol 7 was designed for one purpose: to ensure human survival when faced with overwhelming odds. It wasn't about winning a traditional war. It was about making the cost of destroying humanity so high that enemies would think twice about trying. When the Liberty reached Earth, Morrison found a world transformed. Military bases that had been hidden for decades were now operating openly. Factories that supposedly made civilian goods were revealed to be weapons plants. Ships that looked like cargo haulers were actually disguised warships. Dr. Helen Foster met Morrison at the spaceport. She was Earth's leading expert on alien technology, a brilliant scientist who had spent years studying captured alien devices. "Admiral, we've been waiting for this day for a long time. Everything is ready." "How ready?" Morrison asked as they walked toward a secure facility. "See for yourself," Foster said, leading him into a massive underground complex. "We've been reverse engineering alien technology for 50 years. Every ship we captured, every weapon we found, every piece of equipment we could get our hands on, we studied it all." The complex was huge, filled with workshops and laboratories. Human technicians worked alongside alien devices, creating hybrid technologies that shouldn't have been possible. Morrison saw energy weapons based on Zalari crystals, communication, systems copied from Thek designs, and armor plating inspired by Drakmor ships. "The aliens shared their technology with us through trade and diplomacy," Foster explained. "They thought they were selling us toys. What they were actually doing was giving us the tools to defend ourselves against them." Morrison watched a team of engineers installing a new weapon system on a human destroyer. The weapon used Zalari energy-focusing technology, but the power source was purely human, a fusion reactor that generated more energy than the aliens thought possible. "How many ships can we field?" Morrison asked. "Every human vessel in space is being converted or is already combat-ready," Foster replied. "Cargo ships, passenger liners, mining vessels, even pleasure craft. We've also got the Ghost Fleet, ships that officially don't exist but have been prepared for this exact situation." The Ghost Fleet was humanity's ace in the hole. For decades, human colonies had been building warships in secret, hiding them in asteroid belts and empty star systems. The aliens knew about Earth's official military, but they had no idea about the hundreds of ships that were completely off the books. Captain Tony Martinez arrived at the complex that evening. He commanded one of the human colony defense fleets and had been called back to Earth for briefing. Martinez was young for a captain, but he had proven himself in several skirmishes with pirates and rogue aliens. "Admiral, what's our strategy?" Martinez asked. "The aliens have us outnumbered 10-1. Traditional tactics won't work." Morrison smiled grimly. "Who said anything about traditional tactics? The aliens expect us to fight like they do. Big fleets meeting in open space, slugging it out until someone wins. We're going to give them something completely different." He activated a holographic display showing human space and the approaching alien fleets. Red markers showed where the enemies would likely attack first. "The aliens think they understand human psychology because they've observed us for a century. They think we're aggressive but predictable, like a younger version of themselves." "Aren't we?" Martinez asked. "That's what we wanted them to think," Morrison replied. "In reality, we've been studying them just as carefully as they've been studying us. We know their weaknesses, their blind spots, their psychological profiles, and we're going to exploit every single one." Dr. Kevin Stone, who had returned with Morrison from the failed peace talks, joined the briefing. "I've completed my analysis of the alien leadership. Each species has fundamental flaws that we can use against them." Stone activated his own display, showing psychological profiles of the three alien races. "The Zalari are completely logical but inflexible. They can't adapt when their plans go wrong. The Thek are perfectly coordinated, but they panic when they lose communication with each other. The Drakmor are brave but predictable. They always choose the most aggressive option." Morrison nodded. "So we hit the Zalari with chaos they can't calculate their way out of. We jam Thek communications and watch them fall apart. And we trick the Drakmor into fighting each other instead of us." Over the next few days, human fleets deployed throughout their territory. But they didn't take defensive positions like the aliens expected. Instead, they scattered into small groups and hid in asteroid fields, nebulae, and empty space. When the aliens arrived, they would find no targets for their massive fleets to attack. Lieutenant Colonel Jack Turner was placed in command of the New Terra defense grid. New Terra was humanity's second most important world after Earth, and everyone expected the aliens to attack it first. Turner was a veteran of the colonial wars, a man who had learned to fight smart instead of fighting fair. "Sir, the alien advance scouts are entering our sensor range," reported Sergeant Lisa Roberts from the command center. "3 fleets, just like intelligence predicted." Turner watched the enemy ships on his tactical display. They were moving in a perfect formation, confident and unstoppable. "Let them come. When they get close enough, they're going to get a very unpleasant surprise." The surprise was that New Terra's defenses weren't where the aliens thought they were. The obvious military installations were decoys, filled with sensor equipment that made them look heavily armed. The real weapons were hidden throughout the system, in fake asteroids, disguised space stations, and ships that looked like civilian vessels. Major Susan Walsh commanded one of the hidden strike teams. Her ship looked like a simple cargo hauler, but it was actually packed with advanced weapons and stealth technology. "All teams, this is Phantom Leader. Wait for my signal." The alien fleets entered the New Terra system, expecting to face conventional defenses. Instead, they found themselves in a carefully prepared trap. When the humans finally revealed themselves, it would be at the time and place of their choosing. Admiral Morrison watched the deployment from Earth's command center. Everything was going according to plan, but he knew the real test was still coming. The aliens had underestimated humanity for the last time. Soon they would learn that being young and small didn't mean being weak. General Clark joined Morrison at the tactical display. "Jake, are you sure this will work? We're betting everything on one strategy." Morrison thought about the failed peace talks. about the aliens calling humans pets and infestations. Sir, they made their choice when they decided we weren't worth treating as equals. Now they get to live with the consequences. The alien fleets were almost in position. Soon the galaxy would see what happened when someone threatened humanity's survival. The universe was about to shake at humanity's response. The first alien attack came at dawn on the colony world of Proxima. War Chief Gorthak himself led the Drakmor assault, commanding 20 heavy cruisers against what appeared to be a lightly defended human settlement. The Drakmor had chosen this target because they believed humans would fight desperately to protect their civilians, making them predictable and easy to defeat. Captain Tony Martinez watched the enemy fleet approach from his hiding place inside a hollow asteroid. His small force of 6 destroyers was hopelessly outnumbered, but Martinez wasn't planning to fight fair. He had learned something important during his years defending human colonies. The biggest enemy ships made the biggest targets. "All units, this is Martinez," he said into his communicator. "Remember, we're not trying to win a fleet battle. We're trying to teach these lizards a lesson about underestimating humans." The Drakmor ships entered the system in perfect formation, their scales gleaming in the light of Proxima's star. Gorthak's flagship, a massive dreadnought called the Bloodclaw, led the assault. The Drakmor commander was confident this would be an easy victory against primitive human technology. What Gorthak didn't know was that the humans had been preparing for this exact scenario for decades. The asteroids around Proxima weren't just rocks. They were weapons platforms disguised to look harmless. The cargo ships moving through the system weren't carrying supplies. They were loaded with explosives and remote controls. Martinez waited until the Drakmor fleet was deep inside the asteroid field before giving the signal. "All units, light them up!" The asteroids suddenly came alive with weapon fire. Hidden plasma cannons and missile launchers revealed themselves, pouring destruction into the alien formation. But that was just the beginning of the surprise. The human cargo ships that the Drakmor had ignored suddenly accelerated to ramming speed. Each ship was packed with fusion bombs and guided by remote control, essentially turning civilian vessels into massive guided missiles. The Drakmor tried to shoot them down, but there were too many coming from too many directions. 3 Drakmor cruisers exploded when the suicide ships hit them. 2 more were crippled by asteroid-based weapons. The perfect formation collapsed into chaos as ships tried to avoid the continuing attacks from all sides. But Martinez wasn't done yet. His destroyers emerged from their hiding places and began hit-and-run attacks on the confused Drakmor fleet. The human ships were smaller and faster, able to strike and disappear before the enemy could respond. They used the asteroid field like a maze, always staying one step ahead of their pursuers. Gorthak roared in fury as his fleet fell apart around him. This wasn't how battles were supposed to be fought. Where was the honor in hiding behind rocks and using civilian ships as weapons? But his anger made him predictable, and Martinez was counting on that. "Target the flagship," Martinez ordered. "Let's show their leader what human engineering can do." The human destroyers concentrated their fire on the Bloodclaw, using weapons. That combined human and alien technology in ways that shouldn't have been possible. The Drakmor ship's shields flickered under the assault, and Gorthak found himself fighting for his life instead of conducting an easy raid. In the end, the Drakmor retreated after losing half their fleet. Gorthak's remaining ships limped away from Proxima, their warrior pride shattered by an enemy that refused to fight according to the rules. The humans had suffered minimal casualties while inflicting a devastating defeat on supposedly superior opponents. News of the victory spread quickly through human space, but it was just the beginning. Similar scenes played out across dozens of star systems as alien fleets encountered human defenses that were nothing like what they expected. Dr. Helen Foster monitored the battles from her laboratory on Earth, analyzing how well the hybrid human-alien technologies were performing in combat. The results exceeded her wildest expectations. Human creativity combined with alien science had produced weapons and tactics that neither side could have developed alone. "Admiral Morrison, you need to see this," Foster said, calling up battle reports on her computer screen. "Our reverse-engineered Zalari energy weapons are actually more efficient than the originals. The human power systems we've developed can charge them faster and longer than anything the Zalari have." Morrison studied the data with growing amazement. "How is that possible? Their technology is thousands of years more advanced than ours." "That's exactly the problem," Foster explained. "The Zalari have been using the same basic designs for millennia. They've perfected their technology, but they've also made it stagnant. When humans got hold of their energy-focusing crystals, we didn't just copy their designs, we improved them. Similar innovations were happening across all areas of human technology. Thek communication systems had been modified to work with human neural interfaces, creating coordination capabilities that surpassed even the original hive mind designs. Drakmor armor plating had been combined with human metallurgy to create protection that was both stronger and lighter than anything the aliens had ever produced. But humanity's greatest advantage wasn't technological, it was psychological. The three alien races had become predictable over the centuries, locked into patterns of thinking that served them well in normal times, but made them vulnerable when faced with truly creative opponents. Commander Nicole Davis demonstrated this during the battle for the mining station at Kepler 442. The Thek Collective had sent a swarm of 50 small ships to capture the facility, confident that their perfect coordination would overwhelm any defense. What they encountered instead was a human captain who understood their weakness better than they did themselves. Davis had studied Thek psychology extensively. She knew that their hive mind gave them incredible coordination, but it also made them dependent on constant communication. If that communication was disrupted, the individual ships would become confused and helpless. "Target their communication nodes," Davis ordered her crew. "Not the ships themselves, the relay stations they're using to stay connected." The human weapons focused on a series of small satellites that the Thek had deployed to boost their fleet's communication range. As each relay was destroyed, parts of the Thek swarm lost contact with the collective consciousness. The perfectly coordinated attack dissolved into chaos as individual ships tried to figure out what to do without instructions from the hive mind. Davis pressed her advantage, picking off the isolated Thek vessels one by one. The aliens tried to re-establish communication, but every time they deployed new relays, the humans destroyed them. Within hours, the entire Thek force was either destroyed or fleeing in confusion. The Zalari experienced their own humiliation when they attacked the industrial world of New Geneva. Ambassador Cathara had planned the assault personally, using complex mathematical models to predict every possible human response. The attack was supposed to be a precise surgical strike that would cripple human manufacturing capability with minimal losses. But Colonel Ben Carter, the human commander defending New Geneva, didn't follow any of the mathematical models. Instead of deploying his forces in logical defensive positions, he scattered them randomly throughout the system. Instead of trying to protect the industrial facilities, he abandoned them completely and hid his ships in a nearby nebula. When the Zalari fleet arrived, they found no opposition at all. Confused by this development, Cathara ordered her ships to land troops on the industrial platforms and begin capturing the facilities. It was exactly what Carter had been hoping for. The abandoned factories weren't really abandoned. They were booby traps. Human engineers had rigged every important facility with explosives, turning the entire industrial complex into a massive bomb. When the Zalari troops were inside the buildings, Carter detonated everything at once. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. Cathara lost half her fleet in an instant, along with most of her ground forces. The precise mathematical models that had predicted easy victory had failed to account for an enemy willing to destroy their own property to win a battle. As reports of human victories poured in from across the galaxy, The three alien factions began to realize they had made a serious error in judgment. The humans weren't fighting like any species they had encountered before. Instead of trying to match alien strengths, they were exploiting alien weaknesses with devastating effectiveness. War Chief Gorthak called an emergency meeting with the other alien leaders. The proud Drakmor warrior looked shaken and angry as he appeared on the communication screen. The humans fight without honor. They use tricks and deception instead of honest combat. This is not how civilized species conduct warfare. Node Prime 7734 was equally confused. Human tactics do not follow logical patterns. They appear to act randomly, but their randomness achieves strategic objectives. The collective cannot predict their next moves because they appear to have no consistent strategy. Ambassador Cathera's crystal form flickered with agitation. Human behavior defies mathematical analysis. They make decisions that appear illogical, but produce optimal results. Our models cannot account for such chaotic thinking. What the aliens didn't understand was that chaos was exactly the point. Humans had studied their enemies for decades, learning their strengths and weaknesses. Now they were using that knowledge to fight a war. The three alien factions had suffered embarrassing defeats across human space, but they weren't ready to give up. Instead, they decided to put aside their ancient hatred for each other and focus on what they saw as the real threat: humanity itself. High Counselor Vestan spoke for all three races during a secret meeting held in deep space. The humans have proven more troublesome than expected. Their chaotic tactics are disrupting our carefully planned operations. We must work together to crush them before they become a greater threat to galactic order. War Chief Gorthak agreed, though it pained his warrior pride to cooperate with the crystal minds and bug brains he despised. The humans fight without honor, but they fight effectively. A coordinated assault on their primary colony world will force them into traditional battle, where our superior numbers will ensure victory. Node Prime 7734 calculated the odds with cold precision. New Terra represents the humans' second most important world. They will defend it with everything they have. By concentrating our forces there, we can destroy the majority of their fleet in a single battle. The plan was simple and overwhelming. All three alien factions would bring their remaining fleets to New Terra, over 500 ships in total against the 50 or so vessels that human intelligence suggested were defending the system. Even with their clever tactics, the humans couldn't possibly win against such odds. Colonel Jack Turner received the news of the approaching alien armada with grim determination. He stood in the command center of New Terra's orbital defense platform, surrounded by holographic displays showing the massive enemy force moving toward his world. "Sir, final count shows 537 alien ships," reported Sergeant Lisa Roberts from her sensor station. "All three factions are represented. They'll reach weapons range in 6 hours." Turner nodded calmly. He was a veteran of many battles, a man who had learned that panic was the enemy's best weapon. "How many ships do we have available for defense?" 53, sir," Roberts replied. "Captain Nicole Davis is commanding the mobile defense fleet. The rest are integrated into the orbital platforms. The odds were worse than 10 to 1. Any reasonable military commander would consider the situation hopeless. But Turner wasn't reasonable. He was human, and humans had stopped being reasonable the moment the aliens threatened their existence. "Send a message to all ships and stations," Turner ordered. "Implement Operation Mousetrap. All units are to take their assigned positions and wait for my signal." Operation Mousetrap was humanity's most audacious defensive plan. Instead of trying to stop the alien invasion, they were going to let it succeed and then turn the aliens' own unity against them. Captain Davis received Turner's orders aboard her flagship, the UES Defiant. She was commanding a mixed fleet of destroyers, cruisers, and converted civilian vessels, all of which were heavily outgunned by the approaching alien armada. But Davis had learned something important during her previous battles. Sometimes the best defense was letting your enemy think they were winning. "All ships, this is Davis," she broadcast to her fleet. "Remember the plan. We're not trying to stop them from reaching New Terra. We're trying to make sure they arrive exactly when and where we want them to." The alien fleets entered the new Terra system in perfect formation, with each faction maintaining its own section of the massive armada. The Zalari ships gleamed like deadly jewels, their crystal hulls focusing starlight into weapon beams. The Thek vessels moved in perfect synchronization, a swarm of metal insects ready to devour everything in their path. The Drakmor ships looked like flying fortresses, their scaled armor plates designed to absorb massive amounts of damage. High Counselor Vestan commanded the operation from his flagship, the Crystal Throne. Sensors show minimal human presence. 50 ships, just as our intelligence predicted. They cannot possibly stand against our combined might. War Chief Gorthak was suspicious of the easy approach. Where are their clever tricks? The humans have not fought a single straightforward battle since this conflict began. Why would they start now? Node Prime 7734 analyzed the tactical situation with mechanical precision. Perhaps they recognize the futility of resistance. When faced with overwhelming force, even chaotic minds eventually accept logical conclusions. But the aliens were wrong. The humans hadn't given up. They had prepared the most elaborate trap in military history. As the alien fleet approached New Terra, they began to detect what appeared to be human defensive positions, orbital weapons platforms, fighter squadrons, and defensive minefields were all exactly where military doctrine said they should be. The aliens prepared for a conventional space battle, confident that their superior numbers would carry the day. Captain Davis waited until the alien fleets were committed to their attack before springing the first part of the trap. All units, execute Phase 1. Light up the decoys. The defensive positions that the aliens had detected suddenly revealed themselves to be nothing more than sophisticated holograms and sensor ghosts. The real human defenses were hidden throughout the system in places the aliens would never think to look. As the aliens realized they had been shooting at illusions, the real attack began. Human ships emerged from hiding places inside asteroids, behind moons, and even within the rings of New Terra's gas giant neighbor. But they didn't attack the alien fleets directly. Instead, they targeted the communication systems that allowed the three factions to coordinate their assault. Turner had studied the psychological profiles of all three alien races extensively. He knew that their temporary alliance was held together by mutual necessity rather than trust. If he could disrupt their ability to communicate and coordinate, their ancient hatred for each other would do the rest. The first phase of the attack focused on the Thek communication relays. Human fighters, disguised as debris from destroyed decoy platforms, suddenly activated and swarmed the Thek ships. Their target wasn't the main vessels, but the delicate antenna arrays that allowed the hive mind to function. As Thek ships lost contact with the collective consciousness, they began to panic. Individual vessels started flying erratic patterns, trying to re-establish communication. This broke their perfect formation and left gaps in the alien battle line. The second phase targeted Zalari command and control systems. Human hackers, using modified Thek technology, launched cyber attacks against the crystal-based computers that coordinated Zalari fleet movements. The attacks didn't destroy the systems, but they introduced random errors into the calculations that the Zalari relied on for tactical decisions. Suddenly, Zalari ships were receiving conflicting orders and contradictory target assignments. The logical minds that were their greatest strength became a weakness when fed false information. The final phase was the most audacious. Turner had prepared fake communications that made it appear as if each alien faction was planning to betray the others. Using captured alien communication codes, human operators began broadcasting false messages between the fleets. A fake transmission from the Zalari flagship suggested that the crystal mines were planning to claim all the glory for themselves. Another false message from the tech indicated they were going to assimilate the other fleets once the battle was won. A third fake broadcast from the Drakmor threatened to attack anyone who tried to steal their rightful victory. The effect was immediate and devastating. Centuries of mutual hatred and distrust came flooding back as each faction began to suspect the others of treachery. The unified alien armada started to fracture as ships turned their weapons on their supposed allies. War Chief Gorthak was the first to act on his suspicions. When he received what appeared to be a Zalari transmission, threatening to put the primitive lizards in their place, his warrior rage overwhelmed his tactical judgment. "All Drakmor ships, target the crystal mines!" Gorthak roared. "They dare to insult the honor of the warrior clans. Show them the price of arrogance." The Drakmor ships opened fire on their Zalari allies, who responded with equal fury. Within minutes, a three-way battle erupted in the middle of the invasion fleet as each faction fought the others instead of the humans. High Counselor Vestan tried to restore order, but his logical appeals fell on deaf ears. The Thek, confused by their communication failures, began attacking anything that moved. The Drakmor were consumed by battle rage and no longer cared about military objectives. The Zalari found themselves fighting for survival against former allies. Captain Davis chose this moment to reveal the true human fleet. Ships that had been hiding throughout the system suddenly appeared, surrounding the chaos of the alien battle. But instead of joining the fight, they simply watched as the three alien factions tore each other apart. "All units hold fire," Davis ordered. "Let them destroy each other. We'll clean up whatever's left." Turner monitored the battle from his command center, feeling a cold satisfaction as his plan unfolded perfectly. The aliens had brought 500 ships to conquer New Terra. Now they were using those ships to destroy each other while the humans watched from safety. "Sir, the alien fleets have lost over 60% of their strength," Sergeant Roberts reported. "They're still fighting each other. Should we intervene?" Turner shook his head. "Not yet. Let them finish what they started." When the alien survivors of the Battle of New Terra limped home in scattered groups, their once mighty fleets reduced to broken remnants, they expected the humans to celebrate their victory and return to their defensive positions. They were wrong. Admiral Morrison stood in the war room of the UES Liberty, studying star charts that showed the locations of alien military bases, supply depots, and communication networks. The defensive phase of the war was over. Now it was time for humanity to show the galaxy what they had really learned during decades of careful observation. "Gentlemen and ladies," Morrison addressed his senior staff, "the aliens made a critical error when they decided to unite against us. They revealed the locations of all their major assets. Now we're going to systematically destroy everything that makes their empires function." Lieutenant Commander Ben Carter, one of the brightest tactical minds in the human fleet, activated a holographic display showing alien territory. "Sir, we've identified key targets in all three empires: communication, hubs, supply chains, manufacturing centers, and research facilities. If we hit them simultaneously, we can cripple their ability to coordinate future attacks." Morrison nodded approvingly. Carter was young but brilliant, the kind of officer who thought in 3 dimensions while his enemies were still planning in 2. "What about their response capabilities?" "Limited," replied Major Susan Walsh, who commanded the Special Operations Forces. "They're still rebuilding from the losses at New Terra. More importantly, they're not cooperating anymore. Each faction is retreating to its own territory and blaming the others for the defeat." This was exactly what Morrison had hoped for. The temporary alien alliance had been destroyed by human psychological warfare, leaving each faction isolated and vulnerable. Classic divide-and-conquer strategy, executed on a galactic scale. Dr. Helen Foster entered the briefing room carrying a data pad filled with technical specifications. "Admiral, I have some interesting news about our technological Capabilities. The hybrid weapons systems we've developed are performing better than expected. We're actually ahead of the aliens in several key areas now. Morrison raised an eyebrow. Ahead of civilizations that have been spacefaring for thousands of years? That's exactly why we're ahead, Foster explained. They've had the same technology for so long that they've stopped innovating. We've taken their basic designs and improved them with human engineering principles. Their energy weapons are more efficient now. Their armor is stronger. Their ships are faster. This gave Morrison an idea that was both brilliant and terrifying. Doctor, could we build stealth ships using modified Zalari crystal technology? Foster smiled. Already working on it, sir. The first prototype should be ready for testing next week. The stealth ships would give humanity a crucial advantage in the next phase of the war. While the aliens were still thinking in terms of massive fleet battles, humans would be conducting precision strikes against targets deep inside enemy territory. Captain Nicole Davis received her new orders while her fleet was still patrolling the new Terra system. Instead of defending human worlds, she would be leading raids into alien space using the new stealth technology. Her mission was to destroy enemy infrastructure while avoiding direct confrontation with their remaining fleets. All. "Captains, this is Davis," she broadcasted to her task force. "We're moving from defense to offense. Our job is to make the aliens too busy putting out fires in their own territory to threaten human worlds." The first target was a Zalari crystal refinery in the Arcturus sector. The facility processed quantum crystals that powered the alien empire's faster-than-light technology. Destroying it would severely limit their ability to move ships between star systems. Davis's stealth ships approached the target using modified Zalari technology that made them invisible to their own sensors. The irony wasn't lost on her. They were using alien science to attack alien targets. Human creativity had turned the Zalari's greatest advantage into their greatest weakness. The refinery was heavily defended by automated systems and a small garrison fleet. But the defenses were designed to stop conventional attacks, not invisible ships that could appear anywhere without warning. "Target the main reactor," Davis ordered. "One precise strike should be enough to destroy the entire facility." The stealth ships fired simultaneously, their weapons charged with energy drawn from hybrid human-alien power systems. The reactor containment failed catastrophically, creating a chain reaction that destroyed not only the refinery, but also the defending fleet and several nearby installations. Similar raids were taking place throughout alien space. Major Walsh led commandos in attacks on Thek communication nodes, using their knowledge of hive mind psychology to create maximum chaos. When individual Thek groups lost contact with the collective, they became confused and helpless, making them easy targets for follow-up strikes. The Drakmor suffered a different kind of assault. Instead of attacking their military installations directly, human forces targeted the honor codes and warrior traditions that held their society together. Psychological warfare specialists broadcast fake stories about Drakmor leaders showing cowardice in battle, creating internal conflicts that were more damaging than any weapon. War Chief Gorthak found his authority challenged by subordinates who believed the human propaganda. Several clan leaders declared him unfit to command and began fighting each other for control of the Drakmor military. The warrior race that prided itself on unity and discipline was tearing itself apart from within. But humanity's most devastating weapon wasn't technology or tactics, it was their ability to inspire other species to fight for freedom. Throughout the galaxy, races that had been conquered or enslaved by the three major powers began to rise up, encouraged by human broadcasts that promised support for anyone willing to fight for independence. On the mining world of Kepler 186, the native Keth people had been enslaved by the Zalari for over a century. They were forced to work in dangerous crystal mines, with thousands dying each year from radiation exposure and cave-ins. When human special forces arrived offering weapons and training, the Keth didn't hesitate to rebel. The uprising spread like wildfire as other oppressed species saw that resistance was possible. The humans didn't ask for anything in return, except that the freed worlds refused to support the three empires that had enslaved them. It was a simple but effective strategy. Turn the aliens' own subjects against them. Dr. Kevin Stone monitored these developments from Earth, analyzing their psychological impact on the alien leadership. Admiral, the three factions are approaching a breaking point. Their empires are collapsing from within, and they're starting to panic. Morrison studied Stone's reports with interest. What kind of panic are we talking about? The worst kind, Stone replied. They're beginning to consider desperate measures. Intelligence suggests that all three factions are researching ancient weapons from extinct civilizations. They're looking for something powerful enough to destroy humanity completely. This was troubling news, but not entirely unexpected. Cornered enemies often became the most dangerous, and the aliens were definitely cornered. Their fleets were scattered. Their infrastructure was under constant attack, and their subject populations were in open revolt. Commander Pete Williams brought additional intelligence to Morrison's attention. Sir, we've intercepted communications suggesting that the three factions are planning to raid ancient weapon caches left behind by the Forerunners. The Forerunners were a mysterious race that had disappeared from the galaxy millions of years ago, leaving behind ruins and artifacts that even modern civilizations couldn't fully understand. Some of their weapons were rumored to be capable of destroying entire star systems. Morrison realized that humanity had reached a critical decision point. They could continue their successful campaign of raids and psychological warfare, gradually, wearing down the alien empires over years or decades. Or they could take a much greater risk and try to end the war quickly before the aliens found weapons that could threaten human survival. Prepare the fleets for deep strike operations, Morrison ordered. We're going to hit them before they can dig up any Forerunner superweapons. Target their research facilities, archaeological sites, and any installations that might be connected to ancient technology. It was a dangerous gamble, but Morrison knew that sometimes the greatest risk was taking no risk at all. The aliens had underestimated humanity once and paid a terrible price. Now they were desperate enough to seek power that might destroy them all. The hunt was accelerating, and humanity was closing in for the kill. But the most dangerous part of any hunt was always the moment when the prey realized it had nothing left to lose. The galaxy held its breath as human fleets prepared for the deepest strikes yet into alien territory. The universe had already shaken at humanity's response to the failed peace talks. Now it was about to learn what happened when humans decided that defense wasn't enough. The hunter had indeed become the hunted, but the final confrontation was still to come. The three alien empires were crumbling from within. What had once been mighty civilizations spanning hundreds of star systems were now fractured remnants struggling to maintain control over their own territories. The humans had done more than win battles. They had shattered the very foundations of alien power. High Counselor Vexathon stood in the crystal chamber that served as the Zalari Empire's command center, watching displays that showed rebellion after rebellion spreading across his domain. The logical mind that had once calculated the odds of easy victory over humanity now computed only disaster and defeat. "Report," he commanded, his crystalline voice echoing with barely controlled frustration. 17 more mining worlds have declared independence, replied Sub-Counselor Zara, her crystal form flickering with distress. The Keth uprising has inspired revolts among the Morvak, the Talith, and even some of our own lower caste Zalari. They claim the humans have shown them that freedom is possible. Vexthon's logical mind reeled at the implications. For 1,000 years, the Zalari Empire had maintained control through careful calculation and overwhelming technological superiority. Subject races had accepted their place because resistance seemed hopeless. Now the humans had proved that even the mightiest empires could be defeated. "What of our military response?" Vexthon asked. "Ineffective," Zara admitted. "The human stealth ships continue to strike our installations at will. We cannot defend everything simultaneously, and they seem to know exactly where to hit us for maximum damage. Our supply lines are broken, our communication networks are compromised, and our fleet commanders are requesting permission to retreat to the core worlds. The situation was even worse for the Thek Collective. Node Prime 7734 found itself struggling with a problem that had never existed before in Thek history. Individual members of the collective were refusing to rejoin the hive mind. The Thek had conquered dozens of species by forcing them to undergo mental integration, adding their knowledge and skills to the collective consciousness. But human broadcasts had planted a dangerous idea in the minds of these assimilated beings: the concept that individual thought might be superior to group consciousness. Entire sectors of the Thek collective were going dark as integrated species, broke free from the hive mind, and declared independence. Worse still, some native Thek were beginning to question whether the collective was truly the best way to exist. The perfect unity that had been their greatest strength was falling apart. War Chief. Gorthak faced his own crisis as the Drakmor clans descended into civil war. The proud warrior race that had conquered through strength and honor now found itself divided by competing claims of leadership and conflicting interpretations of the warrior code. "You have brought shame upon the clans," roared clan leader Vorthak, challenging Gorthak's authority in front of the assembled war council. "The humans made fools of us at New Terra, and still you refuse to admit your failure." Gorthak's massive claws extended as his rage built. "I led our warriors into glorious battle. If we were defeated, it was because the other clans lacked courage." "Glorious? Battle?" Vorthak spat. "We were tricked into fighting each other while the humans watched and laughed. There is no honor in such a defeat." The argument escalated into violence as other clan leaders chose sides. Within hours, Drakmor ships were fighting each other throughout their territory. The warrior code that had united them for millennia had become the source of their destruction. Dr. Maria Gonzalez monitored these developments from her position aboard a human command ship operating deep in alien space. As humanity's chief xenobiologist, she had helped design the psychological warfare campaigns that were tearing the alien empires apart. "Admiral Morrison, the breakdown is proceeding faster than our most optimistic projections," she reported during a secure communication. "All three empires are experiencing cascading failures. Their subject populations are in open revolt. Their military forces are scattered or fighting each other, and their leadership structures are collapsing." Morrison reviewed the data from his headquarters on Earth. The results were impressive, but he remained cautious. "What about their search for ancient weapons? Any progress on that front?" Gonzalez's expression darkened. "That's where things get concerning, sir. Our intelligence suggests that all three factions have located potential Forerunner weapon caches. They're working separately now, but each group is getting close to something potentially catastrophic." This was exactly what Morrison had feared. Desperate enemies were dangerous enemies, and the three alien factions were becoming more desperate by the day. If they managed to acquire Forerunner technology, they might be able to destroy humanity even as their own empires fell apart. Captain. Alex Stone received urgent orders to investigate a Zalari archaeological site in the Vega system. Stone was one of humanity's most experienced deep strike commanders, specializing in operations behind enemy lines. His mission was to determine what the Zalari had found and stop them from using it. Stone's stealth ship approached the archaeological site carefully, using every trick in the human playbook to avoid detection. What he saw through his sensors made his blood run cold. The Zalari had uncovered what appeared to be a Forerunner weapons platform buried beneath the surface of a dead world. The ancient structure was massive, larger than most space stations, and covered with symbols that hurt to look at directly. "Sir, I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the artifact," reported Lieutenant Commander Lisa Roberts from the sensor station. "Whatever that thing is, it's powering up." Stone watched as Zalari engineers worked frantically to activate the alien device. If they succeeded, humanity might face destruction from weapons created by a civilization that had vanished before the first human had ever looked up at the stars. "All stations, prepare for immediate assault," Stone ordered. "We're going to stop them from activating that weapon, even if we have to destroy ourselves in the process." Similar scenes were playing out throughout the galaxy as human forces raced to prevent the aliens from acquiring Forerunner technology. Major Walsh led a commando raid on a Thek research facility where scientists were trying to interface with an ancient artificial intelligence. Commander Davis intercepted a Drakmor expedition that had found what appeared to be a planet-killer weapon in an asteroid belt. But the aliens weren't the only ones searching for ancient technology. Dr. Helen Foster had been conducting her own research into Forerunner artifacts, hoping to understand their capabilities before the enemy could use them against humanity. "Admiral, I've made a breakthrough," Foster reported during an emergency briefing. "The Forerunner weapons aren't just incredibly powerful. They're designed to prevent exactly the kind of galactic war we're fighting now." Morrison leaned forward with interest. "Explain." The Forerunners apparently faced a similar situation. "Millions of years ago," Foster continued, "multiple species fighting for galactic dominance using increasingly destructive weapons. The artifacts we've found are designed to reset galactic civilization when it becomes too destructive. This revelation changed everything. The weapons the aliens were seeking weren't just planet killers. They were civilization killers, designed to wipe out any species that threatened galactic stability. If activated, they would destroy not just humanity, but potentially all intelligent life in the galaxy." Morrison realized that the war had reached a critical turning point. The aliens were so desperate to defeat humanity that they were willing to risk destroying everything, including themselves. It was the ultimate act of spite. If they couldn't rule the galaxy, no one could. "All fleet commanders, this is Morrison," he broadcast to every human ship in space. "Priority Alpha authorization. Implement Operation Endgame immediately. We're going in." Operation Endgame was humanity's most ambitious plan yet. Instead of trying to stop the aliens from finding Forerunner weapons, human forces would capture the weapons first and use them to end the war before anyone could destroy the galaxy. It was an incredibly dangerous strategy that required perfect timing and coordination across hundreds of star systems. But Morrison knew that sometimes the only way to prevent total destruction was to risk everything on a single decisive action. The aliens had underestimated humanity's resolve, humanity's creativity, and humanity's willingness to fight for freedom. Now they were about to learn the final lesson, that humans would go to any length to protect not just their own species, but all life in the galaxy. The price of underestimating humanity was about to be paid in full. The only question was whether the galaxy would survive the final battle that was about to begin. Captain Alex Stone's ship raced through space toward the Forerunner weapons platform, knowing that the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. Behind him, a massive human fleet was converging on similar sites throughout alien territory, all working to prevent an apocalypse that would destroy every living thing in the galaxy. The Zalari engineers had almost finished their work on the ancient weapon. Stone could see energy building within the buried structure, patterns of light that seemed to bend reality around them. Whatever the Forerunners had built, it was unlike anything modern science could understand. "Sir, the weapon is reaching critical activation threshold," reported Lieutenant Commander Roberts from her station. "If we're going to stop them, it has to be now." Stone made a decision that would have seemed insane just months earlier. Instead of attacking the Zalari positions, he opened a communication channel directly to their commander. "Zalari vessel, this is Captain Stone of the human fleet. You need to stop what you're doing immediately. That weapon will destroy us all." The response came from Sub-Counselor Zara, her crystalline voice filled with desperate defiance. "Humans, cause the collapse of our empire. If we cannot have victory, then we will have vengeance. The galaxy will learn the price of challenging the Zalari. Look at your own data," Stone urged. That weapon isn't designed to destroy just humans. It's a reset device that will eliminate all advanced civilization in the galaxy. You'll be destroying yourselves along with everyone else. For a moment, there was silence on the communication channel. Stone could imagine Zara's logical mind processing the implications of what he had said. The Zalari prided themselves on rational thought. Surely they could see the truth. You lie, Zara finally responded, but her voice lacked conviction. This is another human deception. Stone transmitted Dr. Foster's research data directly to the Zalari ship. Analyze it yourself. Use your own logic. The energy signatures, the targeting systems, the activation protocols, they're all designed for galactic sterilization, not selective destruction. On the Zalari ship, Zara's team of scientists quickly reviewed the human data. Their crystalline minds were perfect for rapid calculation and analysis. Within minutes, they reached the same terrifying conclusion that the humans had discovered. By the eternal logic, whispered one of the Zalari engineers. The humans speak truth. This weapon will destroy all sapient life within 10,000 light years. Zara faced an impossible choice. Continue with the activation and destroy everything, or admit that the humans had been right and the Zalari had been wrong. For a species that prided itself on logical superiority, it was the ultimate humiliation. But logic demanded survival over pride. Shut down the activation sequence, Zara ordered her engineers. Immediately. Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy as human forces reached other Forerunner sites. The Thek researchers at the Artificial Intelligence Facility were shown the mathematical proof that their discovery would end all individual consciousness forever. The Drakmor warriors found that their planet killer would destroy every world, capable of supporting warrior cultures. In each case, the pattern was the same. The aliens had been so focused on defeating humanity that they had ignored the true nature of the weapons they sought. When faced with evidence that their actions would lead to universal destruction, even the most stubborn alien leaders chose survival over vengeance. Admiral Morrison monitored the global operation from the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching as site after site reported successful intervention. But he knew that stopping the immediate threat was only the beginning. The galaxy needed a new way forward, one that would prevent this kind of catastrophic war from ever happening again. All commanders, this is Morrison, he broadcast to the human fleets. Secure all Forerunner sites and begin implementing the reconstruction protocol. It's time to build something better than what came before. The reconstruction protocol was humanity's plan for rebuilding galactic civilization on new principles. Instead of empires built on conquest and domination, they would create a federation based on cooperation and mutual support. It was an ambitious vision that would require the cooperation of species that had been enemies for millennia. Dr. Kevin Stone arrived at the first interspecies reconciliation conference aboard a neutral station in the Centauri system. As humanity's chief xenopsychologist, he would help design the framework for a new galactic government. The conference was attended by representatives from dozens of species, including the 3 former empires. We gather here not as conquerors and conquered, Stone addressed the assembly, but as survivors who have seen what happens when fear and hatred drive galactic politics. We've all stood on the brink of total destruction. Now we must choose a different path. Sub-Counselor Zara represented the remnants of the Zalari Empire, her crystal form dimmed by the humiliation of defeat. The Zalari acknowledged that our methods were flawed. Logic without wisdom leads to destruction. We are prepared to learn from human examples of cooperation. Node Prime 7734 spoke for the Thek Collective, though its voice now represented far fewer minds than before. The collective has discovered that forced unity creates weakness, not strength. Individual thought, when freely given, produces better solutions than compelled conformity. Clan leader Vorthak had assumed leadership of the Drakmor after Gorthak's death in the Civil Wars. The warrior clans have learned that true honor comes from protecting the weak, not conquering them. We pledge our strength to defend this new alliance. The negotiations took months, with each species contributing their knowledge and experience to create a government unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The new Galactic Federation would be built on principles that humanity had developed during their short but eventful history in space. Individual rights would be guaranteed for all sapient beings. No species could be enslaved or forced to abandon their culture. Economic cooperation would replace military conquest as the path to prosperity. Scientific knowledge would be shared freely among all members. Most importantly, the Federation would be governed by representatives elected by their own people, not appointed by distant emperors. It was democracy on a galactic scale, something that would have been impossible without humanity's example of successful self-governance. Captain Nicole Davis was appointed as the first director of Federation security, tasked with protecting the new alliance from external threats and internal conflicts. Her experience fighting the three empires had taught her that the best defense was making sure no one wanted to attack you in the first place. The Federation fleet won't be an army of conquest, Davis explained to the assembled delegates. It will be a force for protection and rescue. Our ships will defend member worlds from pirates and natural disasters, not invade planets for resources. Dr. Maria Gonzalez established the Federation Science Council, bringing together researchers from hundreds of species to work on challenges that affected everyone. Climate control, disease prevention, asteroid defense, and space exploration were all areas where cooperation produced better results than competition. Major Susan Walsh create